Latin in the Modern World. But before I can really talk to you about Latin, I need to talk to you about a person. His name is Father Andrew Wamhoff. He's a member of the Order of St. Benedict, and he was my Latin teacher in high school. He didn't teach me everything that I know about the language, but I can say what he did give me was a taste for it, a passion for it, and a love for it that I want to share with you guys. It might surprise you, but most of the people in this room actually probably already know some. You're exposed to it all the time. Now this right here is a preamble to the United States Constitution. Each of those words in yellow are from Latin. They come from Latin. And all the words that are over 2 syllables have at least some Latin in them. They're not just totally from them if they're not in yellow. So now, what does that mean? It means that Latin is a ubiquitous language, to give a little nod to Jim. Now this is a really big, complicated chart that I stole from the University of Chicago that shows, how all these languages are tied together, how everything is playing together and supposed to be nice and all that stuff. But, no one, in the end, really cares. No one cares about Ukrainian. These are the things that you need to know. Proto-Indo-European broke into 2 major branches: Sanskrit, which became Hindi, Bengali, etc., and then Latin, which gave us French, and French eventually, because Bill the Bastard invaded England, gave us English. Now, a lot of English comes from Latin, and when I mean a lot, I mean a lot. Over half, more than double the next, of English comes from Latin. Now, some of this is in the really high lexical register, like the phrase I just said. It's not used a lot, but it's there. It's in the dictionary. So I want to talk about studying Latin. Latin is a dead language, as dead as it can be. First it killed the Romans, and now it's studying Latin can be complicated, and the reason why is because, to be fair, the language itself is really, really, really complicated. There are 4-ish verb conjugations, 7-ish noun cases, moods, persons, genders, everything. There's so much, and for someone breaking into it and trying to learn, it sets you at a disadvantage. So I want to maybe pose myself this question: why study classics? Why get a degree in Latin? And I'd like to maybe humbly suggest a degree in Latin isn't a degree in Latin. A degree in Latin is a degree in all sorts of subjects. Because after a certain point, you start reading the seminal works in logic, philosophy, political science, literature and poetry, the dramas, the comedies. You're introduced in learning and studying the language. You're introduced to all these different areas of rich, amazing thought. Now, I don't want to give you the wrong impression about Roman society. They didn't sit around and think and talk all day. This is a picture from a whorehouse in Pompeii. This was the menu that you could walk up to and say, I want a prostitute to do that to me. So they produced great literature, they really, really did, but they also, they weren't saints, God knows. Now I wouldn't be a good classicist if I didn't tell you we don't know everything, and in fact, a lot of what we know we're not really sure about. The period of time that we know the most about would be from the late Roman Republic, like Julius Caesar, through about 200 or 300 AD. And the reason why we have any of this information is because of monks and manuscripts. When the Vandals invaded Rome, Vandals, the capital V, so the Germanic tribe, they destroyed a lot. And over time, Dark Ages happened, blah, 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 and the monks were copying down what we have today as Latin texts. The reason why there were so few Latin texts is because of this man. So I can actually point and say it's his fault that we have so little, and this is Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar in 48 BC burned the great library at Alexandria and destroyed a lot of what we had. We only have 1/5 of the books written by Aristotle, just to give you an idea. So Latin in the modern world. Now this is the inside of the Vatican Library. The Catholic Church is really the beating heart of Latin in the modern world. The ATMs in Vatican City offer a Latin option. In fact, I pulled out 20 euros off of the Latin ATM. Recently, they released a dictionary of 10,000 new words, One of which we know very intimately, being in Bangalore. It's Tempus Maximae Frequentiae, a traffic jam. Now, one of the reasons why they did this is because, for some reason, in the past 20 years, there's been a huge explosion in student interest, especially in high school. In just the past 20 years, an additional 400,000 students have been taking Latin on the high school level. I mean, it's really incredible to think about. Something that in the 60s was considered like stodgy and ivory tower academia, now is being enlivened and taken back into the schools. And why is this? It's kind of become a cultural movement. You know, you have movies like Gladiator, and even though it's a terrible movie, Alexander, and even though there was a lot of sex in it, Rome on HBO. These things, like, bring Rome back into context. They, like, allow people to imagine a society that feels so remote. So I want to ask myself, and by myself, you again, why classics? Why old, dead things? And I'd like to, again, humbly propose that classics is important because it reminds us that people, no matter the difference of time, they live the same way. Humanity, in the past 2,000 years, hasn't really changed. We care about the same things, we love the same way, we fight the same way, we do the same things over and over and over again. And somehow when you open a book that was written 2,000 years ago, you bridge the gap between their experience and your own.